watch and connect.
It's time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a Thursday night. Good to have you with us. Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, the TV star, and the Professor, Tom Hayes. Our phone lines will be open tonight. Jump on board, 800-956-7266. Our email, talkback@sportstalksc.com, and on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Catch you up on your thoughts from signing day yesterday and what happened today with Clemson getting Will Putnam, the offensive lineman out of Tampa. His coach will be joining us here at the bottom of the hour to talk more about that and about him. He says he is a great offensive lineman, the best he has ever seen. On top of that, he's a state champion heavyweight wrestler, something you love to see in your offensive line. Plus, USC basketball last night. The Gamecocks fall at home to Virginia. Now, look, shorthanded Gamecock team that put up a pretty good fight. They ran out of steam in the second half against the fifth-ranked team in the country, which is darn good. I mean, Virginia, they play beautiful basketball. They move the ball. They make the extra pass. And like so many of the best teams in the country, all five men on the floor can score from many different positions. South Carolina just doesn't have it. That was part of the story. And the other part of the story, and you'll hear from Frank Martin coming up, was he went off on a couple of occasions about a question which started out to be related to his scheduling, and it was actually a positive question that was being asked by Mike Gillespie of Wolo here in town. And that is about playing a tough schedule this year, a tough December schedule. What he was trying to get to was, how does that help you prepare for the SEC? Frank didn't let him get that far before he kind of exploded about, very sensitive about scheduling questions. He kind of exploded about that. And to kind of top it off, the icing on the cake, he took on the fans again and attendance at the Colonial Life Arena.
Yeah, the one thing I think he took exception to was the use of the word soft with regards to his schedule. And he actually blew up at me for something that it was a question I asked, and he used my question once to make a separate statement about that last year in one of his opening press remarks. It wasn't necessarily something that I asked him. It's just I said something to trigger him, and he went on a run, and like he is wont to do. But he doesn't like the assertion that last year's schedule was soft or was not necessarily as good of a non-conference schedule as they'd played in recent years. And look, and he puts out the number that last year's strength of schedule was 27. Well, yeah, that was the schedule once you factor in everything involving the conference schedule. Just the non-conference strength of schedule last year was 140. I mean, that's. I'm not sitting here and saying numbers that are fake. That's an actual number. That's real news. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, Frank, we get it. We understand that your SEC schedule kind of takes care of the strength of the schedule in that regard. So, in that regard, I feel like he doesn't really have a leg to stand on. But where I also don't necessarily agree with him is when not only he takes on the fans, but he also took on the media and tried to say that the media, it's our job to write positive things and that we're creating some sort of negative rhetoric. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and bash Frank, because I think Frank is great. I think he's great for this program, and he's the best part of this program being what it is, and I think he's the right person moving forward. But the media loves you, man. Like, don't bite the hand that feeds you. Like there's not a single person in the media group who hates him, other than maybe like one or two Uber fanboys. Like, that you're taking on the wrong person right now.
But didn't he apologize to Mike after?
He did, but no, but here's the thing. He's saying that we have to create positive. That's not how this thing works.
Right.
That's not how this relationship works.
No.
We tell the truth.
He wasn't. I don't think he was mad at the media. I mean,
he said the media is creating the negative rhetoric that's keeping the fans away.
Well, but he said that he referred to us as being part of the team, and we're not part of the team. Now, he might have been talking to the fan websites that cover the team, the Gamecock websites, and they are part of the team. That's how the coaches look at those websites. The rest of us who are independent, we're not part of the team. We stand outside and we look at you from the outside and form our own opinions and observations about what's going on. So I don't think he was mad. He has a hot button about scheduling.
Right.
Yes.
He has another hot button about attendance. Now, last night they announced the attendance at a little over 12,000. There were a fair number of Virginia fans there.
More than I would have liked.
They didn't outnumber Gamecock fans by any means. There were more Gamecock fans there than there were Virginia fans.
Right.
The Virginia fans were loud. But what you have in Virginia and teams of that ilk, you have a strong fan following that will go with them whenever they show up where they can't ordinarily get to them, the fans. So
exactly.
I imagine you had Virginia fans, of course, from the Midlands, maybe other parts of the state, maybe Charlotte, all driving in to see their nationally ranked team, because they can't get to Charlottesville. It's hard to get a ticket.
I say it's hard to get a ticket in Charlottesville.
It's just like the Kentucky fans who can't get into Rupp Arena. They hit the road because that's the only chance to see their guys in person.
That's also Kentucky.
And now South Carolina is going to face the same thing Saturday with Clemson because, first of all, students are gone. It's the holiday weekend. Clemson is, the better team right now at 8-3 and looking to beat South Carolina for the third year in a row. Their fans are going to come in pretty good number, and they're going to be loud. It's going to be up to the Gamecock fans to outnumber them and outshout them. But it's got to come first from the team's performance. You can't go out there and just slop it around and shoot terribly as they did last night overall and from behind the line and not give the fans something to get into.
But I will say this I would say defense of Frank for a second, because I do want to at least present this part. People who are saying, it takes good results for the fans to go out there. Listen, you knew this was going to be a rebuild year when you saw the amount of freshmen and newcomers that had to mesh with what was left of the existing team from last year that was basically put together with Band-Aids and rubber bands. So from that perspective, you knew that this was basically like I would say last year was year 0 for the new regime after the Final Four team. This is year 1. You're still building, and they need the support. I'm not saying that is a wrong thing for him to say. And here's the other part of this too. People saying things like, well, Wofford beat us by 20. Wofford is 40 spots higher in the Ken Palm than you are right now. But Wofford's a good team.
I can hear the fans complain. This is not year 1 or year 2 or year 3. This is year 7.
No, that's not the way this works.
Yes, it is the way it works. 7 years in, you should be established. You shouldn't be having a rotating door in and out of your locker room with so many players.
That's the way everything works in college basketball now.
Not everything, not everywhere, not the good programs.
South Carolina is not a good program.
And Frank Martin is a good coach and should have a good program that is on more solid ground and not having to rebuild in year 7 because so many players have left the program.
Here's the line to touch, and I told you this before. South Carolina fans are like NC State fans. They have this grandiose view of their program that ain't there when you step out of the environment.
I don't think they do for basketball. I think they do for football and baseball. I don't think they have grandiose plans or ideas of their basketball program. I think they're realistic when it comes to basketball. All they want to do is make the tournament on a consistent basis, not once every 15, 20 years.
But if you look at the conference you're in, where you got a lot of football first schools, it's cyclical in the SEC.
Correct.
You're not going to be a Duke or North Carolina. It's almost like fans in South Carolina, especially if they're of a little bit of age, they get schizophrenic. we're in the SEC, man. We playing big time football. And as soon as basketball starts, man, I really wish we wouldn't have pulled out of the ACC.
It took you 44 years to win a tournament game.
Look at your 2017 class. The guys that would be sophomores and should be helping you. Jason Cudd.
Mm-hmm.
Ibrahim Doumbia.
Mm-hmm.
He's at Central Florida. Felipe Haas.
Mm-hmm.
Minor. David Beatty. He's at Temple, I think. Did he go to Temple?
LaSalle.
Manaya, good player, hurt. Frank Booker, gone. Wesley Myers, gone. Brian Bowen, never there. You got really nothing except a good year out of Booker, and Manaya's a good player, a good solid player, and he'll help you. But that's it. That's all you got out of that class. That's my point. You got to do better than that in year 6 then, and now year 7 now. Now, I like the freshman. If he can hold them together and let them grow,
yes,
couple 3 years, but they shouldn't be in that position now, especially 2 years removed from a Final Four.
So much of that Final Four team was built out of players who had developed. You have to restart that class and restart that clock. That's the way college basketball works now when you are at a program like South Carolina.
Okay, we'll be back in just a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
800-956-7266 is the phone number to join us on Sports Talk. The usual fare for a Thursday. Mike Morgan will join us second hour, as will the money coach Fran Halloran. A little bit more from Dabo Sweeney and Will Muschamp on their signing day comments. We also had a chance to speak with some Gamecock players yesterday. We'll sprinkle some of those in as the week continues.
You mean Clemson? Gamecocks today.
I said we had some Gamecock players today.
Thought you said yesterday.
Roll the tape back.
Did he say today? Oh, we do, but we're not hearing from them.
We're not
today.
hearing from them today.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the Clemson players ready to go for today either.
I'm
just telling you I'm not telling you we have it.
Yeah,
we have that, and we also have Robert Weiner, the head coach of Will Putnam, who committed to Clemson and signed with Clemson today, joining us later on this hour. More recruiting to come, and also we'll play some of that Frank Martin audio after we take a couple of phone calls from you.
Yep, 800-956-7266 is our phone number. Couple lines are open if you want to join us as we go to Keith and Aiken. You're in on Sports Talk tonight. Keith, how are you?
Hey, guys. How y'all doing this evening?
We're great. Thank you.
Good. I try to catch you every night. That's kind of my downtime when I get in from work. But I missed a little bit the last couple of nights. And want to ask you, I know people are saying somewhere around 8th, 9th in the SEC recruiting-wise, football, and 20 to 25 nationally, which I don't read a lot of stock into that. I recall, and I may be off, for your second, I think his third year, that class was 4th or 5th. And 3 years later, I think there was only 8 of them left. So don't really get hung up on that. But you were having someone on last night who was evaluating the recruiting class, and I missed that part. So my question is, based on our needs, what is the outlook as far as us filling our needs? Well, y'all could focus on that. I missed that last night. So.
Sure. Well, if you look at the Gamecocks class, and of course today in college football, you must start at the quarterback position. In the old days, you'd start with the line of scrimmage because you had to replenish offensive, defensive linemen. That's still important. But, man, if you don't have a quality quarterback with the RPO game and the spread game and down the field passing, then, you're dead in the water. So they got that guy in Ryan Helinski. So they addressed that. What else I like about this class is the defensive front. They've addressed that with 2 defensive linemen on the interior. Well, Josh Belk is already here, and Jakeem Green, if they sign him in the spring, will be another. But then you factor in, of course, Zach Pickens, Joseph Anderson, defensive ends, Devontae Davis, a defensive end as well, Rodriguez Fitton, a defensive end as well. Now, who knows with some of these guys, they could grow and be moved inside. You add those to the young defensive linemen that they signed, like Sandage, who I think is going to be a really good player based on what we saw this year, the expected continued improvement of Josh Belk, Kinlaw coming back, assuming that everything holds up there, and he does come back as he says he is, J.J. Inabar, who looked very, very good towards the end of the season. They're going to have some of the most depth and quality on their defensive line that they've had in a long, long time. The other thing will be how well the NCAA treats them. If they can get the waivers on some of those defensive backs and the linebacker Thompson and get them back for another year, that's going to be helpful. But the 2 corners they've signed so far, Smith and Dixon, both high quality. So they've addressed that a little bit, and they'll go after more corners here over the next few weeks for the February signing date. So for the most part, the offensive line, they've gotten 4, and they're all big guys. I mean, Jalen Nichols is 300 pounds. Ja'Kai Moore is 290. Murphy is 260. Mark Fox is 290. And they will need to be developed. May take a year or 2, but that's what you want with your offensive linemen. Bring them in, unless they just happen to be a DJ Wanham or a Mitch Hyatt who can go in and play as a true freshman. You develop them, and then you have them for maybe 3 years, 3 good years as a solid SEC lineman.
We were talking earlier about Frank Martin's comments he made last night after the Gamecocks 69-52 loss to Virginia. Here's a little bit of his, discourse with ABC's Mike Gillespie.
Frank, a couple of years ago, the knock on this program was that the schedule was, quote, too easy, barely missing the NCAA tournament because of the easy schedule. Now it seems like, it's almost on the opposite end. I'm wondering, just since you've been doing this for so long, is it worth it in the end to schedule such tough opponents? And what can these guys learn by going up against, top 10 teams back to back?
The only thing that continues to bother me about coaching at the University of South Carolina is when we have to continue to answer questions about my team's scheduling soft. I've never scheduled soft. We scheduled real basketball schools that year. It's not my fault that their players transferred and they ended up having bad years. It's like the schedule this year. We didn't put it together in August once we realized our personnel. The schedule was put together 2 years ago. Just like the schedule 2 years ago was put together 2 years before that. We, and I'm including you guys because we're all on the same team here. We have to stop telling the news and the people that we schedule soft. There's nothing soft in my body, how I was raised, how I live, how I've ever coached. Go back and look at the schedules I put together as a head high school coach. I don't believe in soft. Anything soft and me are never getting along. So please stop. You guys that cover our team, stop. It's disrespectful to me. So please stop. Yeah, but the national media don't say our schedule is soft. You guys say soft, not the national media. So stop. I'm done with this soft stuff, man. Well, who you quoting? Stop. I've answered this 100 times. I'm done with you guys saying that we schedule soft. At K-State, we scheduled top 20. Do you know what our strength of schedule was last year? 27. Does that sound soft to you? Stop with the soft stuff, man. I don't live soft. I'm not soft. I don't want nothing soft around me. We've worked real hard to build a program here that's had 4 winning seasons for the first time in a gazillion years. We've worked real hard to do that. We don't do that by being soft. We don't do that by scheduling easy. We've done that because we schedule hard. We go out and take on challenges. We've beaten top 10 teams. We line up and we go, not because we do things soft. So whoever you're quoting, please tell that person that I said that they need to stop that. No, this schedule was put together 2 years ago. This schedule was not put together in August. The schedule is meant to be hard every year. That's why last year was 27.
Frank was still a little heated at the end after apologizing to Mike.
Is Mike still here? I ain't mad at you, man. I'm just telling you, I'm tired of I ain't mad at you, man. You guys know I respect you guys. I'm just tired of that. We continue to speak on that negativity, and it's hard for me to overcome. That's why we got more Virginia fans than South Carolina fans at our game today. This reminded me of my first year here when we're outnumbered. And that's because we continue to put out the wording on stories pertaining to our team that makes everyone think that we're not good enough. That's insulting to me because you guys and us, have worked too hard to give this school a program that's worthy of lining up against the number 3 team in the number 3. When's the last time number 3 team in the country came into South Carolina for a non-conference game? Huh? When's the last time an ACC school other than Clemson came in this building for a non-conference game? We've worked real hard to make those things happen. So when I hear negative connotation about things that have taken place here before this year, you want to say that I don't know what I'm doing this year and all that, I get it, man. We stink, okay? We're not playing well. But for anyone to refer back to the work that's been done with a negative connotation, I don't – that's not my deal, man. That's not my deal. And we need to change the rhetoric. We need to change the wording of what we've done so our fans get excited, so they understand that I got a bunch of young bucks that are fighting their tails off to give us what we deserve, okay, that I'm not happy with right now, but they're fighting to give us what we deserve. So we don't you think we go to Virginia next year? Do you really think we're going to outnumber their fans? Huh? That used to happen in almost every game my first year here.
The passion is to be admired. I see the Frank Martin that made himself famous at Kansas State. All we didn't get was the stare last night. We needed to get the stare. We didn't get the stare.
No, you didn't get your money's worth.
I think it's a useless battle to take on the fans when it comes to attendance. Fans will come when you're winning and playing good basketball. And the fans did outnumber Virginia fans last night, to be honest.
It's also not our job to carry his water either.
No, and we don't do that. At least not here at this table. Back in a moment.
Well, if there was one point of concern for Clemson's class of 2019 before today, it was the offensive line. I would still say that they probably still need some depth to kind of be shaken out as far as the 2020 class goes for the Tigers, but they certainly plugged themselves a big hole in this year's class with what happened today, Corn.
Yes. Will Putnam, offensive lineman from Tampa, Florida, gives Clemson 3 offensive linemen in this class. They've already got 3 committed for 2020. That's what Dabo was shooting for, 2 to 3 in this class. The Putnam story was quite interesting. His coach, Robert Wiener from Plant High School in Tampa, joins us now. Coach, thank you so much for being with us. And it's been a long, dragged-out affair to get to the answer today. Did you know prior to at about 1:30 when he put the hat on, it was going to be Clemson?
I did know just before, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
I did know just before. We one thing I always do with our players is we make sure that we try to do everything first class. So we want to make sure that there were 3 teams in the running there down the end. It was Auburn and Florida State and Clemson, and we want to make sure that before they hear, and some just announcement or on the internet or something like that, but they actually hear it from Will's voice. And so I usually will get on the phone with, the teams that are down the stretch, and then, and then let him know the first 2 calls are to let him know that he's not coming, and then, and let Will just say thank you for all the recruiting that they've done, and the interest that they had in him, and then. And then we get to make the good call, which was to call Coach Sweeney and make that call. So, Will came in probably about noon and, got himself all situated and ready to go. And then we made those calls. So we knew a little bit before, and Will and I pretty much talked every day. He had shut down talking with coaches and, and really anybody from the media for the last, almost week or so. And, but we had talked back and forth. And of course, mainly the most important thing is that he spent a lot of time talking with his parents. And that's where, they went back and forth on a lot of this info.
There was a picture of him sitting at the table when he came out from behind and before he made the decision known. And he looked pretty beat down. Maybe it was just the picture. I mean, was he worn down by this process?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen Will beat down, because he's a guy that's like, he's the ever-ready bunny. I mean, for a 285-pound guy, like, this guy played 2 ways for us. And, he played 120 snaps a game. And this guy was just indefatigable. And he would just keep going. So I do think the process weighed on him a little bit. And, a lot of times with guys like that, and we've had a lot of big time guys, and very, very fortunately. And, I'm fortunate to be a coach who's talking to you about, a guy who's in such high demand. But a lot of times we get those guys to commit in the summer, and they've already seen everything that they needed to see. And I think Will really had seen everything that he needed to see at that point. But I think he wanted to go through the process and really kind of get to know the coaches through the official visits and through the home visits, and know the guys when he went up for the official visits and things like that. So, Will's the son of an amazing mom, who guides their whole family, and of a father who's a colonel, going to be a general one day, probably in the U.S. Army. And so these are people who, when they're trying to find an answer to something, analyze things in an exhaustive way to make sure that, using military terms, they have the correct intel to be able to make the correct decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Talking with Plant High School coach Robert Weiner, of course, head coach of Will Putnam, who was now the 27th signee of Clemson's class of 2019, joining us here on Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. For those who either haven't seen him on film or Clemson fans will get a look at him for the first time when he arrives, what kind of player are the Tigers getting, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend that if there's any Clemson fans out there that you go ahead and Google Will Putnam Huddle Plant and check out his highlight film. I make all of my films, my highlight films for my kids, all of our kids in our program, and it's a joy that I do. I mean, they work so hard for me that I like to do that for them. But I have to say that I have to say this first, making offensive linemen highlight films. It's not always, I'm an offensive guy, but I'm kind of a skill player guy. And of course, I love our line because that's the only way that we go. But, a lot of times people are watching the ball when you're watching a play, and, making offensive lineman highlight film doesn't always match up with that. But I got to say, Will Putnam's highlight film is a tremendous joy to watch. Anybody who loves the physicality of the game, I kind of monitored his highlight film, The Path to Devastation. And this is a guy who not only takes great joy in putting people on the ground, but once he gets you on the ground, that's just the beginning of the pain that he's going to inflict. if you think that you might just saunter up and get off the ground, he's going to finish you. And he has a tremendous nasty streak on the field, and that goes along. I mean, I think that's perfect, exactly what you want. Our slogan this year is to be a warrior poet, and to be a warrior on the field, and to kind of be a gentleman and poetic guy off the field. And Will is this just tremendous human being off the field, and but he is ferocious on the field and both sides of the ball. And I think that he really, really, really set the tone in a lot of games for us before we even went into the game, because people had seen him on film and wouldn't want to go against him. And that's a lot of good players too. But Will matches that with tremendous technique. He's a real student of the game. He loved our offensive line coach, Sean Love, who played for Penn State and played in the NFL. And he tried to learn everything that he possibly could from Sean. And Will is just really kind of that guy who, at the end of the day, you say you want the total package of a guy who's a technician on the field, a guy who is uber aggressive, and a guy who is also just a guy you want to represent you off the field. He is all of those things.
I understand he was a big-time wrestler, and the skills and concentration level to go mano a mano against a guy at that weight class, and the study of leverage. How has that helped him be a better offensive lineman, in your opinion?
Yeah, there's no doubt. We did, something I thought was cool today at the signing ceremony. We were watching highlight films of all of our guys who were signing, and we had 5 guys out there today, and that was a really, really, really great day of honor for us. And but I had a picture of Will on his highlight film of him holding up his arms in exultation when he won the 285 weight class state championship in the state of Florida for wrestling. And what I did was, in the middle of the highlight film, I paused it, and I said that no state champ should go through plan and not have a state championship ring, because we've won 4 state championships, and we always get our team rings, of course, for the state championships. And as an individual state champ, it's a little bit different in wrestling. But I had gotten our ring company, Balfour, to be able to help us with that, and they got Will a state championship wrestling ring. So that was really, really cool. But I think you're 100% right. I mean, wrestling is such a sport that it's got transfer over into football, and this is a guy who understands, in football, how to get underneath your pads, and in wrestling, he understands how to use that leverage to get himself into a position of advantage. And the one thing about Will in football is, like, if you watch someone that he goes against, if there is 1 second of disadvantage where that other player falls off balance or is not completely ready to go, that Will is going to finish that guy, because from his wrestling time, Will knows how to take advantage of leverage. And if there's a player that he goes against that is not schooled like that, which is most of them, then Will's able to take advantage of that immediately. And I think Will's wrestling had a lot to do with how good he is as a football player. His brother's a wrestler at Oklahoma State, unbelievable wrestler at that. And so, one of Will's real goals was to win a state championship in wrestling, and he did just that.
Coach, we thank you very much. Happy holidays. Appreciate the help. We'll talk to you again soon.
Yeah, same to you guys. Thanks for having me on, and congratulations to Will and everybody in Clemson Nation. They got a good one. And
thank you, sir. Be right back.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
That was a fascinating conversation with Robert Weiner, Plant High School coach out of Tampa. He's the coach of Will Putnam, from now Clemson's 27th signee of the 2019 class. They will do some, as I said yesterday, creative accounting to make sure that all gets them to the 25 number that is the limit. They'll either backload some guys or put some guys forward and have them come in the summer in order to make that number work. Everybody does it, especially when you have the need like Clemson does coming in and with a lot of guys who are leaving. But the one thing that I do want to focus on, guys, is where this puts Clemson now, because we were talking about yesterday about how, you're losing two. This is not the critical year that they're losing guys. Next year is the critical year where they lose potentially 3 to 4 guys who are major contributors as not only just starters, but major depth guys. They needed to make some hay this year before not having to try and overload their class next year with O-linemen.
Right. Well, they went into this year's class knowing they were going to have a big number because of the number of seniors that they would be losing off of this year's team, which numbers, by my count, 20. And so after having a run of years where the number of recruits was small because they had small senior classes, remember that?
Yeah, they had 19 last year, or 18,
something like that.
One year
go back and tell you.
One year they only had about
like
14
11 or 12.
15.
Yeah. So, and that's because they, for the most part, they retain the majority of their players. They do lose some early to the draft. They do lose an occasional transfer here and there, but nothing in mass.
17 last year.
So they keep it together, and so they knew going into this year they'd have more room to play with. And I think Dabo said yesterday the plan was only to sign 2 or 3 offensive linemen, and that's exactly what they have done. Now, next year they've already got 3 committed in the 2020 class, and they'll probably take a couple of more,
and
that would more than offset what they're going to lose this year and next year. On the offensive line. People are worried about the offensive line at Clemson. I mean, you're fretting over nothing. They'll be fine. They always attract good offensive linemen, and usually in a class, maybe every other class, they get that superstar type guy like a Mitch Hyatt. And you look at their offensive line right now. John Simpson was the best offensive lineman in South Carolina as a high school senior coming out of Fort D. Very, very good. Tremaine Ankrum, the right tackle, is one of the top offensive linemen in Georgia coming out of high school. Falcinelli was fairly highly regarded coming out of the Northeast when he came down.
Basically was a guy who they thought they were going to have the gray shirt for a while, and then finally developed his way into a scholarship.
I mentioned Hyatt. Hyatt was one of the top offensive tackles, and he started from day one. That's amazing to walk in as a true freshman at left tackle, the most important position on the line, and you're starting from day one. And so, I mean, they've done a good job. Now Gage Cervenka is kind of a journeyman offensive lineman. He was a Clemson guy through and through, and they took him. He was a state wrestling champion as well, and he's a guy that's been developed. It's taken a little bit of time,
right?
But he's been developed.
He's getting run now, though.
Cade Stewart was a late take. He was originally going to be a preferred walk-on or a gray shirt. They went ahead and took him. They're developing him, and he's coming along. Sean Pollard is was one of the best offensive linemen in North Carolina when he signed with them. They haven't missed on too many. And you look further down the board, I mean, they're going to get more out of Blake Vinson in the years to come. Matt Bockhurst is going to be a player for them at guard.
Jackson Carman is going to start next year.
Jackson Carman will be your left tackle. Noah DeHond, if he gets healthy with the shoulder issue that he's had, the nerve issue, he's going to be a player. Jordan McFadden, the kid out of Dorman, was one, of course, that was going to go to Virginia Tech. He grew up a Clemson guy. They didn't really push it, and then late they pushed it, and they flipped him, and he's coming along, and they think he's going to be a good player. So they're in good shape on the offensive line moving forward.
The key is the fact that because Clemson has been able to effectively control football games, not only do they stockpile linemen, but they get a chance to play. So they get experience before they're thrown into the fray as starters.
I do feel like this is probably, and again, I hate to bring it up, but this is what lives in the mind of every Clemson fan right now. They have still, I don't want to say shock treatment or going in their head from last year's Sugar Bowl, and the fact that offensive line got completely exposed.
Yeah, but look who was on the other side.
I'm just saying that's who you're having to beat, and that's the thing that is in their head right now is they want to see this offensive line go up against, whether it's Alabama, whether it's Notre Dame, somebody who they believe is more inside their league in order to make that happen and turn that into something positive.
All right, so recruiting-wise today, of course, it's the calm after the storm as things have settled down a little bit, and things will be pretty quiet for the most part here through the holidays. But you did have Will Putnam announcing today for Clemson and signing with Clemson. Eric Gray, who was on USC's board, running back out of Memphis, did sign with Tennessee today, as was expected. And so he is gone. And now you just kind of wait for January 5th for the Gamecocks and the Tigers. The Gamecocks, of course, Chris Steele, are they still in the mix there? You know, Steele's gone quiet. I know that Ryan Helinski is still recruiting him and pushing hard. Most people seem to think it's going to be Florida, maybe Oklahoma.
Didn't he work out with him today? Wasn't the day was the day? Thursday?
Well, I know last Thursday.
Last Thursday, okay.
Maybe might have worked out with him today. They're good friends. So
I'm wondering if, getting Dixon might preclude his spot.
I don't think so. I think they took Dixon knowing that they still want Steele. They've got others, for example, and it's no big news today that the Watts kid out of Atlanta announced his final three is South Carolina, Central Florida, and Ole Miss. Those have been his three for a while, so that's nothing new.
And he's a February guy.
He's a February guy. And they've got others that they're looking at. But the other point I was getting to was Quavaris Crouch for Clemson, waiting on him now for January 5th. Whether or not he signs tomorrow, remains to be seen. He doesn't plan to announce anything until the 5th. It might leak out if he signs tomorrow and goes with one school. It could leak out between now and then. But that's another guy that Clemson is hot on. And, I would say that at the end of this protracted recruiting process for him, I think Clemson's going to get him. I think, it was Michigan. He seems to be a cat that is mostly influenced by his last contact. He went to Michigan. He loved Michigan. He's been to Tennessee. He loved Tennessee. Been to Clemson a few times. He's always liked Clemson. Clemson has always been at the top. For a while, South Carolina was strongly in the mix, but they faded. So I think Clemson's going to get him to finish this thing off. I don't know if they'll have room or take anybody else in February. They might be able to take another one in February. That'd be 28 if they get him. Mm-hmm. They could take one of those best guys available sort of thing in February. Wow. But I think, as I sit here tonight, I'm just going again off my gut and my instinct. And I told somebody last night, I didn't mention this on the air. Somebody asked me last night what I thought about Putnam. And I just thought at the end, Clemson would get Putnam because that is where he felt early on, and for much of his recruiting process, it seemed like Clemson was the strongest with him. I know Florida State got in there and muddied the waters some.
Yeah,
but that's a true dumpster fire going on right now.
That's kind of what I think. You can't,
and these guys are kind of scared to go there.
You can't look at that program right now and be ensured of any kind of stability.
Mm-mm. And so
or good coaching
with Crouch. I think it's Clemson, Tennessee, Michigan, probably in that order now.
That was for you, Pro.
I know what you're saying, but hey, 1 year, I'm not going to judge a guy on 1 year.
And Clemson takes him as a linebacker, which is what he wants to play in college. It might give him the Christian Wilkins effect. Hey, you want to run the ball some? We'll set up some plays to run you. So that's what I think is going to happen. As for the ratings today, after the developments of today, this is the Rivals rankings. As of today, it's Alabama number 1, Georgia at number 2, Texas A&M 3, LSU 4, and Clemson at number 5. Oklahoma 6, Oregon 7, Texas 8, Michigan 9, and Penn State at number 10. Arkansas is 12, Notre Dame's 11, Arkansas 12, Tennessee 13. Florida State is still 14 by Rivals despite some issues. Florida 17, South Carolina is at 22, Mississippi State 23, Ole Miss 24. So if you're South Carolina, Kentucky's 28, you say, as we do everything here in the state of South Carolina. Thank you for Mississippi, because it keeps our state from being last
if you're in the top
education.
If you're in the top 25, you had a good recruiting class.
I would agree. Sure. And if you addressed your needs, and I think they did. Top of the hour, we'll be back.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Here on a Thursday night from downtown Columbia, Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, Professor Tom Hayes with you. Coming up in this hour, we're going to hear more from Dabo Sweeney and Will Muschamp on a couple of recruiting-related items. The money coach, Fran Halloran, will be along a little bit later on. Mike Morgan in a moment. There was a basketball game this morning in our state. Winthrop and Maryland Eastern Shore playing this morning in Rock Hill. Winthrop, your winner, 88-74. Eagles improved to 6-4. Kyle Zunick had 10 of a career high, 21 points in the first half. One game tonight with a state team is South Carolina State playing at Miami of Ohio.
Mike Morgan's weekly visit with us, Morgan on the Move, is brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, the mortgage team more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. FoundersFCU.com/mortgage to apply today. And by BP Skinner Clothing, as people nationwide get their custom-made suits and accessories from Brent Skinner, the best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you. You can visit their showroom in the Vista, or where no matter where you are, Brent will come to you. bpskinnerclothiers.com to set up an appointment.
Mike is with us. Morgan on the move on this Thursday edition of Sports Talk. He'll be moving into the Columbia area, not permanently, just for the day on Saturday to call the USC Clemson basket brawl for it all here in the Palmetto State. Yes, the state is on edge for this one, Mike. Saw the Gamecocks last night against Virginia. They are a weekend bunch. Don't know who they'll have healthy for Clemson. Don't know if Clemson will have Marquise Reed available. Could be a couple of teams that are missing some key players. We know Minaya will not be back for South Carolina.
All is true. First off, it's with humble intentions that I sit here as a 2-star, hoping to work my way into a 5-star prospect when it's all said and done.
Well, I plan to offer you a PWO when this is all said and done. By the way, I ran across a new recruiting term the other day. Somebody used the word, like a lean or favoring. This person referred to a recruit as a tilt towards a particular school.
How about this one? I came across this term to describe recruiting rankings, which I know you love so much.
Yes.
Recruiting rankings are nothing more than verbal momentum.
Think
about it.
Momentum.
Well, the tilt wouldn't happen after the guy just comes in and just messes up. When he fails to live up to his expectations, then you can holler tilt.
Call him a tilt.
I don't know anything about tilt other than in pinball and poker.
That's what I'm saying. That's what tilt, yeah.
Anyway, South Carolina Clemson, what do you think on Saturday?
Well, I think it's two teams that could really use a win, that's for sure. I think in the case of Carolina, for obvious reasons, with the funk that they've hit, but they played really well in the loss at Michigan. I thought they played so last night against Virginia. Virginia's a tall order for anybody. Look, they're going to give a lot of people problems all year long. That's not the ideal matchup at this point in time for a team that's still finding its way, particularly leaning heavily on some freshmen. I think that's the biggest difference between the two teams, is that for Carolina to be good this year, freshmen like Lawson and Bryant are going to have to pay major dividends. Whereas for Clemson, they're not getting much out of their freshmen at all, but they really don't need to because it's such a veteran team, particularly when they have a healthy Reed in the lineup. So they can lean on a couple of fifth-year seniors and guys like Eli Thomas, who's turning into a good player. I really like the guy that kind of impresses me is Amir Sims. I know he's a sophomore, but I think he's got a chance to become a good-looking player. For Carolina, I don't know what funk Chris Silva is in, but he needs to snap out of it in a hurry. He's not playing like a first-team All-SEC guy and still makes some of the same mistakes that he has before, and his game has not expanded. He has to be a max-effort guy to be a first-team All-SEC caliber player. He can't just do it on skills like shooting and driving the basketball. He's got to be a guy, a second effort guy, a block shot guy, and all these things he can only do when he's not on the bench in foul trouble. So it starts with him. I do like Lawson and Bryant. I think that's a pretty good two-headed monster to look forward to for years to come. But in the meantime, it looks like a unit that's going to struggle to score, particularly when they get into conference play.
Your thoughts, Mike, on the Fighting Brownells just not having a full unit this year when it comes to Clemson. It seems like, at the beginning of the year, Thomas was hurt. And of course, here lately, Marquise Reed's been hurt. We really haven't seen them at full strength. They're able to go at full go, so to speak. And, the losses to Creighton and Nebraska kind of at least look as in my mind as an outlier, and the fact that they were not able to have as many opportunities in the non-con to impress as much as they really should have.
Yeah, I don't sleep on Nebraska now. I think Nebraska can actually be a pretty good team this year. They could possibly be a tournament team, but overall, I agree. They have not had the most impressive out of conference run. Losing Reed right before the Mississippi State game. I think State had 19 threes in that game. That's one of those, you just chalk it up. It's just not your night, and you lose your best player. They obviously have to have Reed back, and that's the $1 million question when we play on Saturday. Don't know yet, but if they save him for the start of conference play, that's a possibility as well. But when he's back there, look, they are in a lot of ways what every coach would love to have in terms of they're old. They've got juniors and seniors and returning starters in their starting lineup. They're just not very deep, and I don't know if I see a freshman that jumps off the page right now. But if they're healthy, there's no reason to believe they can't compete again in the ACC.
Looking at it last night, they don't have a challenge, but a thumbs up for the ACC. Of course, Virginia winning here in Columbia, and then Auburn, in my opinion, laying an egg, and Raleigh losing to NC State, and Georgia Tech going out to Arkansas and beating them.
After losing at home to Gardner-Webb.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's strange. You're early in both conferences, Mike. Surprises, disappointments?
I think, well, let's start with SEC. I think I don't think there's been a whole lot of surprises, to be honest with you. I thought all along Auburn and Tennessee would be at the top, and Mississippi State and Kentucky would be not far below. You could say Kentucky's a disappointment. They'll play Chapel Hill this weekend, and I don't know if I've got a great feeling about that matchup, to be honest with you, because Kentucky still is kind of figuring who they are. They do this every year because they rely so heavily on freshmen, but I wouldn't want to play them in March. Florida's been a little bit of a disappointment. Now, they played a brutal schedule, but they don't have, other than the fact they beat West Virginia, they don't have those quality wins that you'd like to turn to. Basically, this conference has been relying on Tennessee, Auburn, and Mississippi State to lead the way. And there have been some other upsets here and there. Vanderbilt just got a big win against Arizona State the other night in Nashville. I don't know if the league is going to get 8 bids again this year, because I don't know. A couple of teams that lost key players like Vanderbilt and Missouri are going to be able to live up to the expectations if they had a healthy Porter and a healthy Garland. In terms of the ACC, it's the usual suspects, right? It's North Carolina, Duke, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
You start there, and then it's NC State. Who's going to be the surprise team this year in that conference? I think last year, in large part, it was Clemson. I don't know who it's going to be this year. I think both conferences, though, are still on pretty solid ground, and will be right at the top in terms of total amount of bids in the NCAA tournament. Those two leagues, along with leagues like the Big Ten.
Where do you think Florida is going to head this year? They're 5-4 right now. You see them reversing that situation and getting their way back towards the top when SEC play begins, and what's ailed them to this point?
Yeah. Well, they're part of the problem. I love Memgard, the freshman point guard out of Canada. Part of their problem is Kayvon Allen is now a senior, and I think he's regressed, and that happens sometimes. Not every player gets better freshman to sophomore, sophomore to junior, junior to senior year. But they don't have the great shooting. They've been able. Last year they had the Kulichov kid. The year before that they had the Canyon Berry kid. But they're not a great shooting team, and we're used to seeing Florida being able to go out there and gun a bunch of threes and beat you that way when they need to. And I don't know if that's in their repertoire this year. I still think they're a tournament team, but I don't think they're a team that's built to go very deep once they get there. I think that middle of the SEC is going to be a log jam. Alabama's another team that at times you want to fall in love with them, and other times you just shake your head and say, why can't this team score more? So the middle is going to be kind of cluttered with about 5 schools
Hang
are all
on.
battling.
We're going to hold you over. By the way, Florida's 6-4 after beating Mercer the other day. Back in a moment.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
All right, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, visiting with Mike Morgan. Morgan on the move here for a couple of more minutes. Then we move him out for a little more Dabo Sweeney and Will Muschamp on recruiting. I know you enjoyed National Sign Day. I want to ask you about this off the beaten path of basketball. I mean, I know you're a big timer and you're, flying around the country, seeing this team, that team. But right here in the state of South Carolina, besides South Carolina and Clemson, we have got Furman. We have got the Citadel. We have got Wofford playing some very impressive basketball. The national pundits, for the most part, including yourself, overlook those schools, even though Furman's still undefeated, wins and drops in the AP poll. Where is the respect from you people?
Did you forget the College of Charleston, who I saw twice in person in Orlando?
I'm sorry. College of Charleston as well. Yes, I meant to throw them in there.
You might want to mention that.
I think I should.
Grant's got a team that's good enough to get back to the NCAA tournament. I called their win over Memphis.
Yeah.
In the final day at Disney over there. But yeah, I mean, it's a credit to good coaches. It really starts there. At that level, I actually think at times coaching is even more important at the mid-major level. And you can really separate kind of the men from the boys and the pretenders from the contenders based on the quality of coaching. And you look at some of the veterans in that group, and then of course, not so much of a veteran, but a new kid on the block and Coach Grant and guys like Coach Young. I mean, they've really built up some good foundations at those schools. So while the rest of the country might be sleeping on it, as you mentioned, the only way to get the complete respect, make sure you win your conference tournaments, because those are typically one bid leagues, as you know, and then you'll get in the big dance and everybody will be talking about the Palmetto State.
Mike, it's interesting. You mentioned Wofford, you mentioned College of Charleston. I like to mention Furman. That's my new pet project here. Bob Ritchie's not going to he's not going to want for a job for long if they keep winning like this. Young guy like that. I know he's got ties to the state, but he can pick and choose where he wants to go next if this run continues, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly going to be mentioned for a lot of jobs. And correct me if I'm wrong, they've got LSU coming up, do they not?
On Friday.
In Baton Rouge. So that's another chance to really get some attention if you beat a team. And I'm certainly convinced we'll be in the big dance and has a chance to do some damage in the SEC. Yeah, I mean, the formula is real simple. Sometimes, unlike football, in basketball, if you are a mid-major coach, if you get to the tournament and then you actually pull off an upset or two in the tournament, you're going to be offered jobs. And sometimes it doesn't take that, but if you do that, you're going to be on a lot of radars for a lot of different jobs, depending on what the market is. So
you can keep talking.
Oh, I thought I heard somebody say something.
No, we were just reacting to your use of the word "do" back to back.
You said "do."
Yeah, we did.
Oh, okay. I didn't even pick up on that. Was Jadavian Clowney's nickname in high school. Did you know that?
I did not know that. Well, we've had
made offensive linemen look like that.
We've had a wiener on the show tonight. Now we're talking some doo-doo. So it's all good.
My goodness. I don't know how to transition from any of that. But
hey, Texas Tech is beating Duke 14-12 almost midway through the first half at MSG.
Texas Tech had a great year last season. They will lose that game, but they had a great year last year. Look, there's one thing I've said all along about Duke, even before they got upended by Gonzaga. This is not an unbeatable team. They're going to lead Sports Center, and Zion is one of the most highlight-centric type kids we've ever seen play the sport. Mm-hmm. But there is no guarantee they're even going to the Final Four. It's a really good team. I've seen really good teams in the past, maybe not as flashy, that don't actually win the national titles. And for example, they're not as talented as the Kentucky team that was 38-0 before they lost to Wisconsin in the Final Four. I mean, that team had NBA guys on the bench on the second platoon. Mm-hmm. So I always get a kick when people just overreact to things. They're really good. Zion is a phenomenal player that I love watching. I love Coach K. So this is not me Duke hating. It's just me trying to offer a little reality to things, a little perspective. This is not the best college basketball team of all time.
No.
Mike, you're not going to see two of the best basketball teams of all time either on Saturday, but it should be competitive.
You know, all I'm asking for, and I'm serious when I say this, and you know that I know a thing or two about this rivalry, as obviously you do. Mm. I want to see people show up.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still Carolina, Clemson.
Bingo.
There's no excuse. There was a time where these games were played right in the middle of football season,
or in the middle of the week.
In the middle of the week, terrible time, terrible spot on the calendar. I don't know if you can get much better than this. There's not a heck of a lot else going on that day. It's 2:00 on a Saturday. What else are you going to do in the state of South Carolina? I hope we have a good crowd.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend. We'll see you Saturday.
You got it.
Mike Morgan on the move with us here on Sports Talk.
Let's go to Muschamp because it's shorter. We don't have time for it.
Okay. Muschamp.
Sorry. What?
just in that kind of mood. Muschamp
sorry, that's a hard wipe. I'm sorry.
Yesterday, of course, it was National Signing Day for the Gamecocks, and one of their top signees, Ryan Helinski, quarterback out of California, highly rated, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of promotion in every way. Fans loving him on Twitter, basically just showering him with love and affection and high expectations for when he gets to South Carolina. So we asked Muschamp yesterday at his press conference how he will deal with that, having an established senior quarterback next year in Bentley, having the highly touted quarterback coming in. We all know how people love the other quarterback, and also the fact that so many quarterbacks, highly rated, are transferring out of programs now for one reason or another. The question to Muschamp is, how do you deal with all that with a player like Helinski?
I don't know that we changed anything as far as that's concerned, but they've been first class in how they've handled, Ryan's recruitment, obviously, and the tragic situation that their family's been through. Helinski's Hope is a wonderful charity organization, and we support that as well.
There seems to be an epidemic of quarterbacks who at one time were highly recruited and highly rated, transferring out of the programs for whatever reason, competition, whatever the case may be. You're going to face a situation where you've got an established senior quarterback next year and the highly touted, highly talked about recruit coming in. Have you and the offensive coaches talked about, besides, opening up for competition and all that, but how do you handle that quarterback room with that kind of situation?
You earn everything you get in this program. And if you earn the opportunity to play, then you play. If you earn the opportunity to start, then you start. And we make every decision based on what's going to help our football team win. And I think our players and our organization understand that. The quarterback position, Phil, is a little unique in that there's only one guy playing. It's not like receiver where you can put three guys out there, or defensive back where you're playing with 4 and 5 and sometimes 6 at a time. There's only one guy playing. So that's why you see that as much as anything. But I think we give everybody the fair opportunity to have the shot to play and go from there.
Well, and just in terms of filling positions of need, do you feel like you've done that with these 18, or will there be a greater emphasis on the other 5 that you may add before February?
Would like to be, add an offensive lineman in this class, and I feel like we need to add some defensive backs. I feel good about our numbers, on our roster right now across the board about where we are. You kind of got to get into this kind of like you did when I was in the NFL, and you get in the draft and it's late. You're getting in the late rounds, taking the best available player. That's really what I told the staff this morning. You look at the whatever number we have on the board of guys that we feel like we can sign in February. Let's take best available player right now, as opposed to maybe targeting a need. And that's kind of how I look at it.
All right, Will Muschamp. We'll hear more from Sweeney. Just looking at the class, let's go through it quickly. The corners, Cam Smith and Johnny Dixon. Got to like them both. Defensive ends, Rodriguez Fitton, Devontae Davis, Zach Pickens, Joseph Anderson. I mean, all good-looking guys. Defensive line, if they get them in, Jakeem Green. Of course, Josh Bell got a chance to be a really, really good player. If he follows the Kinlaw direction, he'll be a really good player. Linebackers, Jamar Brown, a little undersized. Derek Boykins, really like him. Shrine Bowler out of North Carolina, 6'2", 225. Got to like that size. Mark Fox on the offensive line. Vincent Murphy, Jalen Nichols, Ja'Kai Moore. May get some early snaps more. Helinski, quarterback. Kevin Harris, the running back. The tight ends, both good athletic type tight ends, and Keyshawn Toney and Travion Kenyon. Your 2 receivers, Kevion Mullins and Tyquan Johnson. Johnson has tremendous speed. And then Jamel Cook is in this class as the safety transfer, and he'll be a big, big help next year.
I want to talk about this Dabo thing because it could provide some controversy. Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we continue here on a Thursday. Remember, we will get ourselves ready for the Bowls all next week. I'll be in Dallas beginning Tuesday all the way through the weekend. And, of course, Corn will have all the coverage from Charlotte for the Belk Bowl. I'll actually be on television to promote the Cotton Bowl coverage of ours with our friend Corey Miller for a Monday night edition of Sports Zone on Watch Fox here in the Midlands. So if you're watching 10:30 Monday night, I'll be in there.
Pastor of Payne, last night after the basketball game, the pastor and I were reflecting on our various football careers, and I was demonstrating to him my swim move as a sack master. He was very impressed with how I got up underneath him. Actually, I thought it was a swim move. It was actually the up and under, kind of the hook move.
Yeah. Were you wearing a snorkel with your swim move?
All right. So
the thing about Corey, if he gets a hand on you,
he's got a grip.
Grip. he moves you around like you're a box of crackers.
Dude's handshake.
It's called ragdolling, is what I think.
Yeah, like a ragdoll. Yes.
Yeah.
So Dabo Swinney, I don't want to say he took some fire or was under fire, but when the early signing period kind of came into its advent, he was very, very staunch on the fact that he was not going to allow official visits to juniors in the spring because of the fact that he wanted them to visit unofficially, and he wouldn't allow them to go on an official visit until the fall period of their senior year. He's been very, very much on that crusade and said that he does not want that to happen. He was asked about now going through this cycle fully a couple of times now, whether or not he's noticed a change in the way that his program is perceived as a result of that, and he gave this impassioned response.
Here comes this beautiful lady walking across. Hey, will you marry me? Well, she says yes. Well, she might look good, but you might hate each other. You know what I'm saying? Who does that? But that's what happens in this recruiting process. You just throw a million offers out there, and I don't like that. If they're really interested in Clemson, they're going to come here unofficially on their own. And so my message to the staff is if they won't come unofficially, they're not going to come for 4 years. So, that's – now, again, you might have a situation late in late December, late January, like a situation that happened to us our first year in 2015. I didn't know who Isaiah Simmons was a week before signing day. Never heard of him. I didn't know who Kayvon Wallace was. Never heard of him. I didn't know who Travis Etienne was until – I had never met him until January of his senior year. Sometimes the situations present themselves that create change. We had 4 DBs leave after that that first national championship year that I was counting on coming. I didn't know they were leaving. And I'm not going to give their spots away until I know that they're not coming. I'm counting on them. They got their spot. Well, they say, hey, I'm leaving. So now we got like 3 weeks to go recruit DBs. And that's just – we got pretty good guys. Isaiah turned out to be pretty good. Call him up. Hey, you got a visit left? I'd like to get to know you. Like your tape, but let's see if it's a fit. So he obviously didn't come unofficially. He came on the official, but this is a week before signing day. So it's a little different. But early in the process, I want guys to really be invested and want to come see Clemson, be interested enough. And so, and the coach is under a lot of pressure. Well, I believe it was ET, as a matter of fact, because that was one of them that was about, because he was taking his officials. I believe it was at Tenosa. And, but I told Brent, I said, if he takes an official visit here, it's going to be on the back end. I said, if he's not coming here, and so, he came and his family came. And the kid ended up committing to Clemson, and we were the only place he didn't officially visit. But he was interested enough and had followed our program enough that he wanted to come see it. And so that's just my personal philosophy. Because, again, I think when a guy comes unofficially, then he, to me, is sending you a message that, you know what, hey, I'm interested in Clemson. Now, he may hate it when he gets here, but at least he came on his own. And so that's just my personal philosophy. And so and I told the staff, I said, I guarantee we'll have 20 commits by August 1. Just watch. And we did. We had more than that by that time. And we unbelievable young people. So it's not that it's just, to me, it's how I protect our program. It's how I protect our culture. I'm not trying to be like everybody else. I want to be Clemson. And Clemson's not for everybody. I understand that and I get that. But I want it to be a two-way street, and I want them to want to be here. You know, for Brighton Constantine to jump in the car from Baton Rouge and come all the way with his mom, you know, multiple times. You know, man, that's investment. That's commitment. I mean, there's intention there. It's been real easy for me to throw them on a plane in April and fly them in and put them up and all this stuff, you know. And then for me too, I just want more time to evaluate. And so that's kind of it's just how we do it. Now, 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had any choice, you know, but our program was in a different place 10 years ago than we are right now.
Thoughts, gentlemen?
Exactly. It's in a different place. It's in a different place where most programs in the country, he can afford to shop that way. You know, he can afford to shop at Tiffany's and, you know, places like that.
Don't start making those grocery store.
I wasn't going grocery store.
Tiffany's.
But what I'm saying is he can afford to tell a recruit no. He can afford to say, listen, you know, I want you. If you commit, you got to cut it off. Otherwise, don't commit. And he has stood by his policy on that over the last several years since they became a really great national program to where he could do that. And, you know, it's a position of power. It's where all coaches want to be in recruiting. You think they all want to be out offering 300 kids and knocking on every door that they can get to? You know, he's able to kind of select the ones, and they also select him now. You know, Clemson is a major attraction. They attract national players, and thus they reach out to Clemson and say, I'm interested. Are you? And it begins the relationship. So their recruiting over the last several years is like a well-oiled machine. It is so well organized and runs so smoothly. Had a little hiccup this year, I thought, with the offensive line situation, the way things turned out, and they took a late offering commitment from Boateng earlier this week after missing on some other offensive linemen, but they got the big offensive lineman that they really coveted. The other one they really coveted was the kid out of Alabama who signed with Georgia. This was another one that they really coveted today, and they got him, and that just sort of makes up for it and just shows you that, you know, Clemson has staying power in its recruiting process, even with guys who've gone silent for a long time and have looked at other places. You know, they get most of those guys more than they miss on. That's why I think come January 5th, when he puts the hat on, I think Crouch is going to put on a Tiger Paw hat.
The one thing, again, they do this probably more differently than anybody else does. And the fact that, you know, like you always like to say, when they offer a kid, when they want a kid to commit, they want them to shut everything down. And that's a lot of the reason why their commitment rate and their retention rate is one of the highest in the country.
That's why it's manipulated.
Let me say this,
you got to do it that way.
Now, South Carolina, you know, you're going to be ranked 22nd, 23rd, whatever. You're going to be 9th in the SEC, and people are saying, wow, you know, how are you ever going to catch up? Well, that's a bunch of hooey, you know. It's like we asked Jake Bentley today about the hype around Helinski, and he said, look, you know, hype ends when you get here. He says, I'm not throwing shade on anybody, but hype ends when you get here. Star ratings, all that ends. It's about performance and going in and working and getting it done. So, you know, that's all a bunch of bogus stuff, to be quite honest with you. It's nice to talk about. It's nice to look at. But I was going to say this. Yesterday, when leaving South Carolina in the late afternoon, early evening, it was dark, and you could see the new administration building, football administration building, lit up.
Ops building.
And the indoor facility lit up. And man, is it impressive looking. I mean, that is going to be now when you bring prospects onto campus of South Carolina and you come to visit. I don't know how they'll do their visits. You start them out first at the stadium and go over there, or vice versa. But it's just going to be a nice, neat package for them that's just got to help them when that's part of the formula for a family and a player, facilities and comfort level. That's really got to help them.
Well, when you look at recruiting, I always look at teams and ask a person, man, so-and-so's low in recruiting. Why did TCU have the run they had? Why is Central Florida having the run they had? Because these coaches are finding players that other teams don't want.
They also don't live in the SEC.
And they develop them.
Come live in the SEC and recruit like that. Come live in the SEC and see what happens.
But they beat Auburn last year.
It's one game.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We have had a lot on our plate today. Of course, we have talked a lot of hoops. We've talked some football, and also we've talked to a coach who is part of one of Clemson's big signees, and Robert Weiner. And now we talk to the man about the money.
Who wants to talk about the money of these incoming recruits and what it's going to mean moving forward. Before we get to that real quick, I just ran across here on a Michigan board a tweet related to the Michigan football Twitter account where they were tweeting out pictures of, as they said, signees in old Michigan uniform style, and they included a picture of Quavaris Crouch in a tweet, which I think has been deleted according to this. And the question is, was this an accident, or
do they think they have him?
I think they have him, yeah. So interesting situation there, but nothing else to back that up or confirm it. As we welcome in the money coach, Fran Halloran. And before we do that, I got to ask you a serious money question. When is the stock market going to stop diving, for crying out loud?
Well, Phil, the truth be told, the stock market only does two things. It goes up, it goes down. And we have been on a bull run for a long time. And it's about time that the market started correcting itself a little bit. And some of these drops we've been waiting for a long time. But ultimately, what I want you to look at is this. This is the best time you could possibly invest your money in the market, because everything's on sale. Everything is 12 to 15% less than it was 2.5 months ago.
So it's Black Friday in the NYSE. Is what you're telling me.
We ain't even close to Black Friday. We're not even close. We've gotten so used to good times, we forget 2000, 2001, 2002, where we had 3 straight years of negative returns in the market. And all we seem to remember is 2008, thanks to the mortgage-backed security crisis, we ended up seeing about a 35% drop in the market.
Yeah.
This too shall pass. Hang in there. Keep investing. Ask great questions of your financial coach or your financial advisor. If you don't have one, call me and I'll help you.
And the number is?
888-779-2557, 888-779-2557.
Yeah, how would you recognize a good time if you hadn't been through a bad time?
That's a great point, Pro. It's only in times of struggle that any of us learn anything. I have been guilty of thumping my chest in the good times of my life and saying it's all about me. It's all about me. Well, ultimately, it's never about me. When we go through tough times, that's when we learn. So, and these aren't really tough times. We'll get out of this. Don't worry. Market may drop a little more. Don't freak out if it does, but we'll all be okay. Market goes up, market goes down. We'll be fine.
All right. Well, the recruiting market went up yesterday for a lot of teams who brought in some highly talented guys. What does this mean from a financial standpoint?
Well, first of all, I want to point something out. A while back, 2 months ago, we talked about Clemson really needing to step it up to gain that national program prominence. And you asked me then, how do they do that? And I mentioned that night, they got to play bigger games on bigger stages than just the playoffs. And they also need to recruit all over the country. Wow, Dabo must have been listening, because what did they sign? One kid from South Carolina?
That's it.
Everyone else is from another state, as far away as California. Now, South Carolina got a California kid as well, but I'll tell you, Clemson is doing some amazing things up there, whether you like Dabo Swinney and their program or not. He is putting Clemson on a national stage year in and year out, and they are going to be a force to be reckoned with for a long, long time. The Gamecocks, on the other hand, had a fantastic class as far as I'm concerned. A lot of great kids, a lot of positions that needed to be filled, they've done. But from a financial standpoint, I don't think people really understand the commitments, the dollar amounts that really we're talking about when a guy like Coach Muschamp signs. I believe it was it 18 kids? 18 kids got signed yesterday. Is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
18 kids. Now, I just did a little bit of math, right? Tuition room and board at South Carolina is roughly $27,000 a year, right? Most of these kids are going to be in the program for 5 years. That's $135,000 per kid.
Mm-hmm.
They get a $420 to $450 cost of living stipend every month. For 5 years, that's another $21,000 a year. Plus, during the season, during training, they get about $4,000 worth of swag every year. Over the course of their 5 years, right? Maybe $800 to $1,000 each year. That's another $4,000 plus bucks. That brings the total cost per kid right at $160,000 per athlete. That's what the University of South Carolina and Coach Muschamp has committed to per kid, $160,000 or $2.88 million in scholarship, swag, and cost of living stipends. That is a massive, massive sum of money. And it is no wonder these coaches are paid like CEOs anymore of Fortune 100 companies, not necessarily 500 companies, but Fortune 100 companies, because they are running multi-million-dollar operations. Extrapolate this out. They do it every year. You're talking about $12, $15 million they're spending over the course of a 4-year cycle just on these athletes. That is a massive, massive number. And take it out even further. There's how many? 120 now Division I football programs? Is that right? 120 or
129? 129, I think it is.
That's correct.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is an enormous money hole. College, and we're just talking college football, guys.
Mm-hmm.
So when you really look at these numbers, you really start breaking them down, you understand why Coach Muschamp and his staff, Coach Swinney and his staff, they have to really drill down into the details on these kids, yet they're still taking massive chances because these are 18-year-old young men who are apt to do anything. It's quite a system when you really drill down to the details like that.
And the footprint, like you mentioned, is growing for both of these schools with the coaches being where they are. You mentioned Dabo signing. He now has guys from 24 states. He just signed his first guys from California, Michigan, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania. Of course, California has been a real haven as well for South Carolina with Helinski, and you think about Jamel Cook as well, and some of the other players who they've looked at. It's interesting to see how these guys, I know people want to see all the South Carolina guys, but, I think it's exciting when you see somebody from California or Florida or even the Northeast, D.C. area, things like that, who want to come to South Carolina and Clemson.
I couldn't agree with you more, Will, because what it says is Coach Muschamp and Coach Swinney are the right guys for the job. Because if they can pull people out of these geographical areas that South Carolina has historically not been able to really recruit from, it means this program in Columbia and obviously that program up in Clemson are on the right path and they're doing the right things. Kids are not going to travel out of their comfort zone unless they have a real reason to kind of bond with that coach. And it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt that Clemson has been in the championship semifinals, 4 years in a row? Is it 4 years in a row?
This is it.
This is the fourth year.
Let me ask you a quick question before we leave you.
Amazing.
So what was that figure again annually for, say, South Carolina? It was what?
$2.88 million
per year.
We're talking about per year, per recruiting class. And that's only for 18 kids. What do they offer, 25 scholarships?
Yes. Oh, you're just talking about, okay, so you didn't extrapolate that for like the 85.
That's just for a recruiting class.
Recruiting period.
Well, I'm going to say this too, and that's all cool and all that, but think about this. Every spring, South Carolina, for example, gets a check from the SEC for about, what, $40-something million now?
About that.
Not to mention per game take-home revenue is probably in a couple of mil. Mm-hmm. At least.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, it's,
huge business.
They're not losing money over there on this deal.
Well, and counted in the travel budget they have to get some of these recruits from all over the country.
Well, their recruiting budget is hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's peanuts.
I wonder what Alabama probably plays.
Good stuff.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good stuff there. Enjoy the holidays. We'll catch you on the other side, sir.
Outstanding. Y'all have a great evening.
You too. Thanks to everybody. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. glad you did it.
All right, sir.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow afternoon when I get back from Hot Ladder.
Are you going to that barbecue thing, right?
Indeed. It's actually more of a, well, I think they have barbecue, but they also have chicken bog. It's good eating. See it? Yeah, I love a good chicken bog. Brian, you like a good chicken bog? Who does? Yeah. Bull rush. That's what I wanted to say. Not swim move. Bull rush.